What the? I gotta show this to Peter. Peter, you won't believe this. So you know about the built-in 4-axis gimbal? Yeah. Did you know about the
6K ProRes?
Yeah. Oh, but
LiDAR?
Yeah.
I know.
Dang it!
Miss you.
Prize. Oh, got a feeling, and I won't keep quiet. Hey, I'm going, yeah, I feel alive. Oh, get ready, tonight's the night. You know I break through the roof, don't you? You know I'm ready to fight, alright. I'm just a rebel that's on the move. There ain't no stopping me, so don't try.
This is the DJI Ronin 4D, their first cinema camera, and wow, did they do it differently. They just completely innovated what a cinema camera could be, and the biggest difference is this. There is literally not a 3-axis gimbal, a 4-axis gimbal built into this camera. They essentially took a cinema camera, a gimbal, and just put it into one, and this is what they came up with. How does it work? Well, it basically has sensors on the bottom and front here, and as you move, it's stabilizing the vertical movement by analyzing how far the ground is from the camera. That is just like ingenious. And you guys saw the results. Everything in this video was shot on this Ronin 4D handheld. No one wheels, no other stabilizers, just handheld. Us just running, bombing it down. Like absolutely nuts. Impossibly stable results with nothing else needed. And I was so skeptical when I first heard of this. I was like, there's no way that this can actually work really well. But we tested it in all sorts of terrain, on normal ground, sand, big rocks with cracks, and it worked really well in pretty much every scenario, to the point where every time I was just blown away at like, how did we just get this shot so easily without setting up any other gear, just turning on this camera, pressing this one little 4D button, and what? Now you can literally do dolly slider looking shots.
Check this one-hand shot here. Smooth as butter.
That weren't possible before because you would have that up and down movement with the gimbal. They just solved that completely, and this is a whole new ballgame. This is better than any gimbal I've ever used, and like I keep saying, it's just built straight into your camera. The future of gimbals is here, and apparently the future of cinema cameras. Not only is this gimbal super impressive, but the footage looks incredible. It's a full frame 6K, up to 48 frames per second. And then if you want to just crop to that like cinema crop mode, then you can do 60 frames per second, 100 frames per second in 2K for the full frame, and then if you want 120 frames per second, you can do the Super 35 mode, and you're gonna get that. Did I mention they're also making an 8K version of this, which I'm really curious to see. It shoots in ProRes 422 HQ, which is incredible, ProRes RAW, and then we have H.264 if you want that too. And the color science, the dynamic range, everything just looks really high quality. Dual ISO, ISO 800 and ISO 5000, so it should work pretty well in low light. We only had 1 day to test this. Everything we filmed in this video has been filmed in 1 day, so I didn't really get to do a low light test. But it should be pretty decent there. I literally have no complaints about the image, it being an actual cinema camera, which I was a little bit worried about. And the build of the camera is very well thought out. You have handles on both sides, so you can hold it like this. You have a focus wheel here and some buttons like record and your gimbal mode, the stabilization mode, peaking, autofocus in here. Then you have the gimbal control for tilt and panning it, exposure here in your autofocus modes. You have the top handle, which also has a gimbal stabilization mode button, so you can do, for example, sport mode really easily. And interestingly, they put a gimbal tilt little switch here, which is very handy. I use this all the time when I was setting up the shots. At first I was like, do we really need that? But it is really handy to have just that control right there, so when you're just holding it like this, you can just figure out what tilt you need on the gimbal. The LCD screen is really great. It's really easy to just move around to wherever you need it. We have buttons on top and bottom to change the settings, and it's also a touch screen, which is really nice. Menus button on here, view your video clips on the bottom here, and then we gotta scroll to get through the menus. I love the mixture of touchscreen and having those tactile buttons. And then we have a transmitter accessory. I believe this doesn't come stock, so you would put this on, and then we have the battery here. And that's not all. You can also do a wireless transmitter, and very interestingly, you can actually take your handles here and put them on here. And now we can do wireless monitoring. We can see what's going on. We can do follow focus right here. Just again, very well thought out, this whole thing. I'm so impressed, especially since this is the first stab at a cinema camera for DJI. This is really incredible stuff. The lenses is where it gets a little bit tricky. So this is a small DJI lens, and you can use these lenses, but you can also pretty much use any lens. Right now they don't have all the mounts, but you can change the mount out. So you can put, for example, an E mount on there and a whole bunch of other mounts in the future. But whatever lens you do put on here has to be pretty small. I don't know exactly what the size and weight of it needs to be, but it can't be too big. The thing is though, you could use these DJI lenses, for example, as your kind of like gimbal lenses, and then you could just tuck away this thing, lock all the axes, and then put on a bigger lens and just use this as a normal cinema camera without the gimbal features. So I think that's actually probably the best way to use this camera in a whole bunch of scenarios. Sometimes you want that crazy stabilization, you want gimbal-like movement, and sometimes you just want the highest quality cinema camera with really nice glass, and you can actually get both, surprisingly. Now you are gonna have a whole bunch of extra stuff on the camera when you're just using it like a normal cinema camera, but it can be done. It's really nice that you have that option. We filmed everything using autofocus. It works really well. There's a bunch of different formats or ways of doing autofocus. They even have smart autofocus, so it's going to do really good tracking on different objects or subjects. You can even just draw a box around whatever you want it to be focusing on. So that was a little bit weird to get used to, all the different focus modes that this has, but overall worked very well. In terms of storage, they made it very easy for us. You can go with the cheapest storage, which is just external SSDs. You can go with CF Express B cards, which are pretty expensive, but they say they're really reliable. And then you have these DJI Pro SSD cards, and this is what we were using it, and it just fits straight in there. And I actually like this a lot because you can just straight up put your USB-C cable in there and then you're ready to go. You don't need to use any adapters or card readers or anything like that. But there's more. There's also LiDAR. You guys heard Peter say it. There's LiDAR on this camera, and it's really interesting for two reasons. One, you can actually make manual lenses, like some old school manual lens. You can make it autofocus using this. I didn't get to test this out yet. I'm really curious to see how that works. I'm a little bit skeptical, but maybe it works really well. But the other thing that you can do with the LiDAR, it actually gives you this top-down view of what's in your scene. And then without even having to really look at your scene, you can just look at that to judge your focus. So you can see where the focus is going, and once it gets to that person or that subject or goes back here, it's really smart. It works really well. It's way better than peaking or something like that. Again, it's gonna take a little bit of getting used to, but super smart way to use this LiDAR. I feel like that's just something that you didn't have to put in here, but they just threw that in there also. So I've just been raving about how crazy this thing is, and it really is. I haven't been this excited about a camera, I don't know when. This is the most innovative camera I've ever seen, I think, in my whole life. And so what are the downsides? Well, the first one being it's pretty heavy. I don't know what the pounds are right now. It's pretty heavy. We were doing a lot of running with it, and let's just say we were sweating buckets. So that's the first thing. If you want to get real nitpicky, it takes a long time to power on. So I think it's probably around like 30 seconds before it's on. So you might miss some shots with that. But I think the biggest downside of this is the lenses. You're not going to be able to put whatever lens you want on this gimbal system. But like I said, I think, I didn't use it like this, but I think you could just lock it up, put on whatever lens you want, and then use it like a normal cinema camera if you want to do that. And like you guys saw, the image is super nice coming out of this, so it should work really well. It's like this like 2-in-1 combo. Why not just have both? And the last one is price. I don't actually know what this thing costs right now. They haven't told us yet. They said they're keeping that for launch. I don't think the super high-end, high-budget, big-budget productions are going to be using this very much. I think it'd be a very specific use if they were. They have unlimited budgets. They're going to go for the highest quality, the best lenses, all of that stuff. And so this needs to be affordable enough that a beginner to medium budget production could afford this. Otherwise, it gets into this weird area where it's too expensive for most people, but then the people that could afford it don't really want it. They want the even better quality. So yeah, the price could be a negative, but it could also be very affordable, and it could be a huge positive. We'll see. I guess you know by now probably. Hands down, this is the most innovative camera, the most interesting camera of the year. It's not even close. It's almost like they took all of their different technologies, the cameras from their best drones, their gimbal technology, the monitors that they make on their drones, the sensors that they have on their drones, and they just put it all into this one thing. All this thing is really missing is just propellers to fly it around. That's literally it. Wow, well done, DJI. This is a great first stab at a cinema camera. All right, see you guys.
Are you ready? Gonna take the prize.